Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Two Funny Astronauts. I'm one of your hosts, Garrett Reisman.
And I'm the other host, Mike Massimino. And we had a guest in our last episode, Mike Bueno, and we liked having him so much that we asked him to come back again. And so we're kind of trying to be three funny astronauts. And remember, we're not saying we're funny people, we're just funny for astronauts. So welcome back, Mike. Thanks for coming back.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So
I can't believe you wanted to come back again after that last episode. I mean, that's a very, very brave.
I'm a very slow learner. Yes.
Also, the other thing I'm worried about is, you mentioned in the last episode that he is our one listener.
Nobody listens.
As we record these episodes, who's listening now?
I think
we got no audience.
It's a marketing thing. We have the audience come on the show. Whoever's listening comes on the show, and then their job is to find another listener, and then they come on the show, and then that's the way we'll do it, and we'll build as long as. And our goal is to have more listeners.
It's a pyramid scheme.
Right. We want our goal is to have more listeners than episodes. That's what we have to do. We want to come. That's what our goal is.
That's good.
It's a marketing scheme.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to get my wife to listen, and my kids, and maybe my mom. So this thing could go exponential. I think it's
wow.
I can think of 2 or 3 people that might want to listen. So
shooting for the stars on that one.
It's like Amway. Yeah.
It's just like that.
But we have Mike back because he had so many good stories that we wanted to keep going and get some more of them out, get some of them out there so the 2 or 3 people listening can enjoy them. And so where do we want to go, Mike? We had a chance to fly together on 125, and that was your first flight. Garrett was your second flight where you were a veteran. But what was that like getting assigned to your first flight?
Oh, it was so exciting. And I just remember, well, you guys know, there's such a mystery. I don't know how I ever got selected to be an astronaut, right? There's a lot of mystery into what goes on there. What are they looking for? Who are they going to pick? We talked about the interview process and all that stuff. But then once you get selected to be an astronaut, then the next big thing is getting selected to be on a crew, to get assigned to a mission. And so, we'd been there quite a while, and there were starting to be some rumors about this Hubble mission, and that they were going to assign the crew pretty soon. It was going to be any day. And so I was sitting in my office, minding my own business there at my little, desk and laptop. And I get a call from the corner office, where the chief of the office sat. And this is how you get notified. They call you in one at a time. They don't bring the whole crew in. They just tell you one person at a time, hey, you're going to be on this crew. So they call me, I get this call, you come on down to the corner office. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. I'm going to get assigned to the Hubble crew. This is awesome. So I go walking down there as cool as I can and walk through the door, check in with the administrative assistant there at the desk. I said, hi, I'm here. I heard you guys want to talk to me about stuff. And she says, oh yeah, thanks for coming in, Mike. And she hands me this piece of paper, and it was for a urine test. So this is the same way they told you that you got picked randomly to do a pee test, So she's like, here's your piece of paper. Go pee in a cup somewhere. And that was it. So I was crushed. I was like, oh my gosh. I thought I was going to get assigned to a space mission, and they just want me to pee in a cup.
Maybe that was a prerequisite.
Might be, but 2 things there. One, you said you don't know why they selected you, but on the last episode, I think you gave us the answer, which is that the other guy was scared of monkeys. So, of course, they're gonna pick you. You're not scared of the monkeys.
Yeah.
I was not afraid of the Wizard of Oz. No, so I made the cut.
And then the other thing is, you say, they call you down one at a time. They don't do it in front of the whole crew. You know why that is? Because you might say no. You might say, okay, you want me to fly with that Reisman guy? No, forget about it. And they don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. They check with you first. That's why they do that. I don't know if you knew.
I know. It's like,
but then,
yeah. Do you remember getting?
Go ahead.
Do you remember getting selected, Mike? You remember them calling you up?
Yeah, no, I had what happened with one story similar to yours, Mike, that I'll tell quickly. I'll try to tell quickly. But what you said reminded me of was probably we were in the office for a couple of years, and they were always getting me and Rick Mastracchio mixed up. We asked how, because we had similar last names. We were in the same class, and people asked me how did I get selected. I think because they thought I was Mastracchio. They weren't used to long Italian names that began with MAS. And they were like, you're not the same. And people, the thing with Rick was he's such a nice guy. He was such a great astronaut, right? People would go to him, would go to Rick, and they would get us mixed up. So they would come to me. And I remember when I first started, Rick had worked in the office for a while, and some guy came up, I don't know who it was, came up and said, hey, great job you did with the STA on that software fix that we had a couple of years ago. And I'm like, I didn't even know what the STA was at the time. But they thought and I didn't know what to tell. I was like, oh, thank you very much. So I was getting credit for stuff I didn't even understand. And I think Mastracchio was getting like people calling him looking for money. Yeah, hey, you always, what is this guy? So I didn't. It really worked in my favor, but it was like I guess we were there for a few years, and our class, similar to your classes, it took a while for us to start getting assigned. And the rumor, there was kind of these rumors going around, and I thought Rick might be going on one of those missions with the station where, the station build got delayed, and so they started inserting flights. Remember that, like the dot flights. 28.1, 28.2, that kind of thing was going on.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought he was going to get assigned, and they called me up, right? It was from and it was over it was from FCOD. It was like Tammy West or someone like that calls up and says, "Hi, Mike, how are you today?" And I go, "I'm okay. Am I in trouble?" And she says, "No, but why aren't you over here?" And I go, "Why don't you check if I'm supposed to be over there?" Because the rumor was they were going to make this. And I was like, this is happening again. So the phone goes silent, right? She goes to check, and then she comes back, sorry, Mike, wrong guy. And she hangs up on me just like that. So then Charlie Precourt, who was the chief of the office at the time in that meeting, years later, I got to know him as, we became friends. And I asked him, whatever happened with that? He goes, oh, yeah. He goes, she comes in and says, I've got Mike Massimino on the phone. And I'm like, why? And she goes, is that? And they go, no, it's Mastracchio. So they were trying. I almost got his flight because our names were so similar. So
you should have just gone. Why did you ask her to check?
Yeah.
Just show up.
No, I knew better, Garrett. They would have eventually known the difference. Believe me. They would have said,
it might take them a while.
Yeah, how many of these guys? But we used to get mixed up all the time. I went to vote one time, and they thought I was him. I used to get his mail. It was just in New York. We had plenty of people with long Italian last names. But in Texas, not so much. So anyway, but eventually, Mike, you got the call to be on. We all got that call that same day. I guess it was Halloween. Remember? I think it was Halloween.
That's right. It was Halloween.
When we all were picked. We all were told that we were going to be on that flight. So
yeah,
that was kind of exciting. And then our training experiences began, which were very challenging, but also a lot of fun too. And you're a big baseball fan. Garrett and I have talked about our baseball experiences. You're, of course, a Cleveland Indians fan and a big baseball fan. So we had some baseball experiences together too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So part of our, we trained. A lot of our training was at the Goddard Space Flight Center in Baltimore, Maryland, or out there in Maryland somewhere. I don't know which. But while we're
Greenbelt, Maryland.
That's right. Thank you, Mike. I remember Baltimore, though, because we got invited as a crew to go to the Baltimore Orioles baseball game. And they wanted us to throw out the first pitch. And I think their idea was that we were all seven going to throw out the first pitch all at the same time. Balls going everywhere. And Scooter was like, no, that's a bad idea. We're not doing that. And then the natural, obvious choice would be for Scooter, the commander, to throw out the first pitch. He's the boss, right? He's in charge. But he had a bad experience from the last mission where he had done something similar, and he threw out a first pitch at an Orioles game. Well, the Orioles are the mascot is a bird. It's an Oriole, and so Scooter's throwing out the first pitch from the mound at the game, and he's throwing to the mascot though, to a bird, not to one of the baseball players. So the bird is there, and he's got a glove or something. He's going to catch it, and right in the windup, Scooter's getting ready to throw it, and the bird, well, the mascot, his eyes are on like the side. So to be able to see Scooter, he kind of has to go like this to look out the eye hole to catch the ball. But to Scooter, it looks like he's not looking at him no more. And so Scooter's like, he didn't want to hit the bird with the ball. So he tries to hold up and he just spikes the ball into the ground. It was the worst first pitch ever. So he's got this scar tissue. He's like, no first pitch.
No, wait.
He got booed. He got booed.
Let me hold on. You got booed, right? Let me stop you right there. Because I heard that Scooter told me this story himself, okay? And I've heard this before. And I bought it too. I'm like, oh yeah, the bird turned his head so he could see, so he could catch. And that's why you hesitated, because you didn't want to hit the bird in the head. I get it. And then, one day I was walking, like a year later, I'm walking around Disneyland, all right? And I'm looking at all these mascots. The eye holes are all in the front, okay? They have to be, because otherwise, how would they walk? You can't walk like this all the time. The eye holes have to be in the front. That whole thing was was bullshit. That's an excuse that Scooter made up just because he bounced it, and to kind of like save face and defend himself. He came up with this elaborate story about the eye holes in the side. There's no eye holes in the side. The eye holes are always in the front.
Well, I was an eyewitness to this because I was on the crew.
You were there, right, Matt? You were there for both of them. I was
there right next to him.
Right.
And Mike, it relates to what you ended up doing, because what I was worried about with him, I remember hearing about first pitches for the first time from Brent Jett, and he said he threw one out and Brent Jett was a cool dude. He was just, nothing could shake this guy, right? We both knew him. He was a space shuttle commander, great guy, just a cool cucumber, right? Just cool guy. Nothing I think could ever rattle him. He told me that he threw a pitch out in Baltimore for the Goddard Space Flight Center, years earlier. This was when I was a new astronaut. He was telling me the story. And he said Davey Johnson was the manager of the Orioles and threw him a baseball and said, will you sign this for my kid? And he said, sure. This is after he threw the pitch. And he said his hand was actually shaking a little bit. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Your hand? I mean, my hand shakes when I'm, eating lasagna. This guy, is going to So I remember that, like, if this thing could get this guy, and he goes, I'm telling you, he goes, I was a little nervous. I can't believe that Brent Jett would ever get nervous about anything, but it was throwing that pitch out could do that to him. So when Scooter's going to throw it out.
It's true.
What's that?
People ask me, like, what's the scariest thing I ever had to do as an astronaut? And the easy answer to that question definitely is throwing out a first pitch.
There you are.
It's way more scary than anything else we ever did. It's terrible, which is why if you mess it up, because there's so much pressure on you, we're so competitive, obviously, all of us. You don't want to bounce the ball. You don't want to embarrass yourself. And you will do anything to avoid that, including making up some cockamamie story about eye holes being on the side of the head.
So here's so Matt, let's tell them about what we did. So what
you did, so Scooter didn't practice, because I was saying you got to practice, and he refused to practice. So I dragged him out there, and he was not practicing, and he got out there, and the thing with the bird did happen, and he bounced it, and he got booed, and someone came up to him and said, I hope you can fly the space shuttle better than you can throw a pitch. And I was traumatic. So, Mike, then what happens when it's your turn to do this?
So Scooter's not doing it. So I actually used to be a pitcher when I was a kid. So I actually became an astronaut to throw out a first pitch. That was my whole gig. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a baseball player or a policeman, So, but it became pretty obvious when I was young that I wasn't going to make it to the bigs, So I was like, I want to throw out a first pitch. This is my only way to do it. I got to be an astronaut. So I actually, I was thrilled to get this chance. And I hadn't even flown yet, I don't think. So Scooter picked me, and he's like, but he gives me the ball, and he's like, do not screw this up. This is important. Do not screw this up. And so we're at Goddard at training. But we got the game that night. And so I go, Mass, I got to warm up. I got to practice. And so we decide as we're driving from the hotel into Goddard, I see a local high school. I go, Mass, let's go back to that high school. They must have a baseball field, and we can throw there. I want to throw off the mound. I got to warm up the right distance, everything. So I had brought a ball with me, I think, or we got a ball.
We had our gloves.
Yeah, we
brought our gloves. We were prepared. And we weren't going to let this happen again.
So I'm pitching, and Mass is my catcher, and we're warming up, and I'm throwing to him. And I'm throwing hard. I'm trying to throw a good pitch in there, and I want to get warmed up. But we're just on the side because on the field is the baseball team. the high school baseball team is out there practicing and they're in our way. And so finally I'm throwing on the side, and I'm like, I can't take it anymore. And I'm like, Mass, I got to get out there on the field, you know? And so we just decide, I walk out there and I talk to the coach and I said, hey, I'm throwing out the first pitch tonight at the Orioles game. Can I throw a couple here to your guys at batting practice, you know? So he says, yeah, sure, that's great. So, you know, I get on the rubber and I'm throwing batting practice now to the high school team and really getting in some good warm-ups. But and it all paid off because that night, you know, at the game it went well. I didn't bounce it in. I think it was a strike. So
it was a strike.
And I had the whole crew is there behind me. They're heckling me. I got the bird. I got all this distraction. But yeah, it was the most.
Who caught it? A player?
I don't remember who caught it now.
It was a player, though, right? I don't think it
wasn't the bird.
Yeah,
the bird, I think, was next to us.
Yeah, because then after I threw it, then the bird like grabbed Megan.
Yeah,
remember he like assaulted her.
Yeah, we had to save Megan from the bird.
Save Megan from the bird. He was like grabbing her. It was terrible.
You were really out there on a limb because if you bounced it when you're throwing to a player, you can't make up some baloney story about a bird with the eye holes on the side.
Well, we weren't going to let that happen again, Garrett.
Yeah, but that was the whole reason. I became an astronaut was to throw out a first pitch, and so.
Didn't you take that ball with us on the flight? Didn't you and use it again or something? It wasn't. You kept that ball had multi uses.
Yeah, that's the rest of the story. Is that so? I wanted, I'm from Cleveland, a big Cleveland Indians fan, and so I wanted to throw out a first pitch at an Indians game. And I actually, our family knows the owners, the Dolans, great family and owners of the Cleveland Indians. And so I was talking to him after I got selected to be an astronaut. I was talking to him and I said, hey, my dream has always been to throw out a first pitch at an Indians game. And he says, this is like the story you guys told the first time. They're like, he's like, have you ever flown in space? And I said, no. He says, call me when you've flown in space. So I take that ball with me on the Hubble mission. I have a ball with me. So it's flown in space now. And I go back to him after we land. And I said, Mr. Dolan, guess what? I flew in space. How about let me throw out a first pitch at an Indians game? And he said, yes. He was very gracious. He was just, so he set me up at.
I understand his reluctance because, you're talking about Ohio. They have a couple of famous astronauts there. They got like Neil Armstrong, like John Glenn.
Yeah, there's
right?
a couple guys.
And here you come along like I haven't even like left the ground and they're like, you want to throw the first pitch. That's a little presumptuous.
It was very presumptuous. He was like, no. But it was pretty cool when I finally got to do it because my mom and dad were there, my whole family, and all my high school buddies were there. And they were actually, there was a bet going on. There was a pool. They had a side bets going on. Like the over-under was 60 feet, right? Because the pitch is 60 feet, 6 inches. So they were all betting, and they were all betting the under. They thought for sure I was going to bounce it in there. But I proved them all wrong and threw a strike.
It would have been so funny if the owner was like, oh, you want to throw the first pitch? All right. So were you the first man to walk on the moon?
Yeah.
No.
First American to orbit the Earth?
No.
Come back when you've done that.
But he was very kind. He was very gracious. So I always appreciated that. Yeah.
That's cool.
Very cool.
I remember. So training wasn't always a ball of laughs, though. I remember it was hard sometimes. I mean, some of the sims were pretty tricky. The stuff that they made us do was kind of crazy, huh?
I know. And so Garrett and I sat next to each other on the flight deck. We had the commander and pilot up front, and then we sat up there with them. We were like the flight engineers up there on the flight deck. And Garrett was to my right, and we had, we would back each other up. We had different jobs, and some of the simulators in the training were just crazy, because we weren't practicing the normal easy stuff. We were practicing these far out contingency cases. So I remember there was this one where we were trying to do like fly manually coming back from space, and it's all about managing your energy. And so you have to, calculate the bank angles. And normally the computers do all this, but it was like the computers are out. And so we had to like do algebra. We had to do math, not just in public, but at Mach 25 in the cabin of the space shuttle. And I had to like take these two numbers and subtract them and multiply by this and divide by this. And I was trying to give Hawk, the commander, a bank angle to fly so that we wouldn't die, right? So that we wouldn't burn up and die on reentry. Yeah. And so it was important enough that Garrett was assigned the task, make sure he doesn't screw this up, And so I'm doing all these calculations, and then I would give him a number, and Garrett would be backing me up. And if I was screwed up, he would say, "Wait a second," so that and get it right. So I'm doing this, and undoubtedly I was screwing it up, and so I was giving him numbers, but it really depended on. It was constantly changing too. It depended on when you stopped and took picked the numbers off the displays in front of you. And so if I started at a different time than Garrett, then we might come up with different answers. But I was given answers, and then Garrett was given his answers, and it was it was pandemonium. It was confusion. Hawk was pissed. He's like, just give me a number. And so I was getting pissed too at Garrett. And so I said, hey, Garrett, just concur with me. Because what I wanted him to do was just say, yep, that's a good number. But so don't come up with your own number. Just tell me I'm right. That's all I need to hear from you.
So the whole rest of for forever to this day, I still get teased all the time because they say, your job is to concur with Bueno.
That's right. So this keeps coming up. Every time that there's a disagreement between Garrett and I turn to him and I say, look, Garrett, just concur with me.
This even like this played out over the course of time. This was a running gag. So like much later on, I had already left NASA and I went to work at SpaceX, and Bueno over here was still at NASA, but working no longer as an active astronaut at this point. He was a management guy, and he was on the selection board that was part of this procurement. So it's when they have this big program, the Commercial Crew Program, which was going to be billions of dollars on the line to a private company to fly NASA astronauts into space. And as you all know, SpaceX was one of and Boeing were the two that were selected. But we were competing at the time, and I was representing SpaceX, and Bueno was across the table representing NASA, and we couldn't even talk to each other. We couldn't be friends anymore. It was really difficult because we're good friends, but we couldn't even call each other on the phone because this whole process is sacrosanct. It
was like a blackout,
they
right?
Keep it
it was illegal. Like we could get thrown in jail for this, right?
Yeah, we could if we were trying to game the system or anything. We can get in big trouble. So I had to find some way to break through those. So at one point he's up there presenting on behalf of NASA in this official presentation with this ballroom full of contractors hanging on his every word. And he said something, and then they said, okay, now we will take comments from the contractors, from the private companies. So I stood up and said, I have a comment, and then they said yes. I said, I just want to say that I concur with Bueno.
Finally, it's a little late.
I needed the $1 billion. Of course I was going to concur with you. What do you?
Oh gosh. So I was joking that we could go to prison, but that reminds me of some funny prison stories that we had from this funny crew that we were on for 132.
I thought we were not going to talk about our time in prison. That was like the ground rule.
You're not talking about being in the airlock that night, are you?
No, nothing.
All right.
Nothing about that.
Nothing happened there. Nothing happened there.
I remember there's a couple of prison stories. Weren't we driving by a prison at some point after, we were on travel with the crew?
Yeah. I remember we all flew our T-38s as a crew. So we flew in formation in these T-38s, I really miss doing that. Those things were amazing. But we landed in Dallas at Fort Worth Alliance Airport. And we got out of these supersonic capable T-38 fighter trainers, and we piled into a minivan, right? So it's quite a come down to reality. But we borrowed this minivan from the airport so we can go get lunch. And we're piling in the minivan. We're driving out of the parking lot all together, all six of us on the crew, and we're passing. And right there is a prison. We're driving by a prison. And I'm looking out the window, and I just made the comment oh, that must suck. and Antonelli, Tony Antonelli, our pilot, looks at me and he goes, yeah. And I'm like, he goes, why do you say that? And I'm like, Well, if you're in prison, like you can't like decide what you want to eat. You can't be like, oh, tonight for dinner, I really want to go out and get pizza, or Chinese food or something. You got to eat whatever they give you. If it's meatloaf, you got to eat the meatloaf, And he looks at me, and all you guys started piling on me and mocking me. They're like, that's what you are afraid about? That's what bothers you about prison? Is the food? It's like, really? What about, other things that happen in prison?
The showers.
And the showers, all that.
But that's, again, Garrett, but this is back to all these Navy guys, right? When they're out on the boat, right. That's the same thing as being in prison, right? They don't get to order pizza or, they don't get to pick their menu.
That's what Hawk was like, on the boat, that's what it's like every day. Yeah. If they're serving the meatloaf on the boat, you eat the meatloaf. Yeah, I didn't get that. So, yeah. But the other prison, the other story we have about prison.
Yeah.
And I know I'm making a bunch of other astronauts out there really nervous because when we start telling prison stories, it opens up a can of worms.
A lot of them aren't funny. Let's leave it at that.
That's true.
But these are good.
That's right. So I can tell the.
Yeah.
So the other one, this is like when I was at SpaceX, especially during that when I was leading our proposal team for Commercial Crew, and you were on the source board. Both of us were working like crazy. That was an incredibly intense period, right? And there's not really a lot of comedy in that because really that was one of the most excruciatingly painfully stressful things I've ever done as a professional, all right? It was really hard and working really, really long hours and a lot of stress. And I remember I landed there at Orlando Airport because I don't have a T-38 anymore, so I have to fly on Southwest. And I landed there at Orlando, and I get my rental car, and I'm driving to the Kennedy Space Center. And right there's a prison as you get on the B line to go down to the KSC. And I'm driving by that prison, and I remember this time I looked at the prison, and I had a very different reaction. I looked at the prison, I'm like, oh, that looks pretty good. And I'm thinking...
Yeah, prison in Florida? It's like a vacation. Right.
You get like 8 hours of sleep a night, easy. You could catch up on your reading. You have time to work out. Nothing to worry about. There's not like it's not like you have a meeting you have to do or a report that's due the next day. I'm like, that looks pretty good. So I get to the meeting and you're up there on the desk there with to do your presentation. I'm sitting out there with the Boeing and the Lockheed guys and everybody else that's in the audience hanging on your every word. And I'm with one of our vice presidents at SpaceX, and I'm sitting next to his vice president, and I'm telling him the story. I'm like, I think this is getting to me. I'm like, I drove by the prison on the way here, and I'm looking at that thinking, like, that looks pretty good. And he looks at me, and he goes, Reisman, that's okay. You'll be all right. It's when you pass the cemetery and have that thought that then you have to worry.
So on 132 with you, it really was. We've said it a few times already. We said it in part one. You guys were a funny crew. I mean, we're funny astronauts here, but that crew, when it came out, I was like, holy cow. And Piers he was my astronaut classmate, a British guy. We talked in one of our other episodes, Garrett, of how he actually cracked up the Queen. Remember Bueno when we met the Queen? And Piers was there. He cracked up the Queen. That's how funny this guy was. He made the Queen laugh, and he used to make us laugh all the time. But you guys got to both fly. I never got to do that. You guys got to fly in space with Piers. And, of course, we lost him, unfortunately. Piers passed a few years ago. Very young man, very unfortunate. He got sick and it was terrible situations. But we still have his memories. So tell us a little bit about that guy, what it was like to be in space with him or train with him.
Yeah, I'll start, Garrett, and then I'll let you tell a story. But what I remember about Piers is he was just so funny that but it was just these quips. He was so quick. I couldn't imagine how he could come up with something about anything. You could just throw out a word like, tape or patch or, just any random word. And he would have a quip about it within, a millisecond. So I remember one of the cool things about the 132 crew, and I give credit to Ken Ham, our commander, for doing this, was we'd all flown. So there was no rookies on this flight. So he thought, well, let's all do something that we haven't done before. Let's just, give people different experiences. And Piers was a great spacewalker, and he had done several spacewalks, but he wanted to give some of us a chance to do that too. So we actually had 3 spacewalks and we had 3 spacewalkers, and then we did this round robin. But that left between Garrett and Steve Bowen and I. But that left Garrett out of the spacewalking, and he was a great spacewalker and he loved to spacewalk. So this was hard for him, but he was, just a consummate professional.
You're talking about Piers.
Piers, yeah.
You said Garrett.
Oh, did I say Garrett? No, I'm completely mistaken. He's.
I was like, wait a minute, who was that guy out there?
He's like, oh, hey, Piers, I thought you were taller.
No,
we all look the same in the suit. I know.
No, Piers was left out. So Ken Ham asked Piers, "Hey, I need you to do the robotic arm. I need you to fly the ISS robotic arm." And it was made by a Canadian company, and so you had to actually go to Canada to get the training over a couple weeks, and it was very intense in training. And so, this is all coming down on Piers like at once. Like Hawk is telling him, "Look, you're not going to do spacewalks. I really need you to be a robotic arm operator. You need to go to Canada where it's very cold and for weeks and be up there and do this robotic arm training." And Piers just looked at him and said, "All right, then, I guess I better get a warm coat." And that was it. But that was it. He completely accepted it, but that's where he went. He's like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right, but I better get a warm coat because I'm not going to be up there in Canada and freeze my butt off. Yeah.
He was just such a great guy. I mean, he was just so considerate and genial and kind. I mean, I remember one I was really happy for him because one really good thing that happened for him was we're up there. He and I had to do this robotics test together during this mission. So we're in the space station. We're in what's called a cupola, which is this incredible little room on the space station, which is like a dome where you get a 360. It's like a like half a sphere. So you get like a 360 view of the Earth. All these windows. We tell people who don't get to do a spacewalk that the view out that cupola is like just as good as the view we get when we spacewalk. It's not. Shh. It makes them feel better, so don't tell them. But
good thing none of them are listening.
It's just us.
The good thing is just the only people listening are you and my mother, apparently. So we don't have to worry about the secret getting out. But we're in this cupola and we're doing this task and we got a beautiful view. Not as good as the view you get spacewalk, but still pretty good. And the other the thing about it was we happened to have this particular orbit at this part of the mission where we were flying regularly over the UK during orbital noon, meaning when it's lit up by the sun, when it's during the day. Okay, so we were flying over, we would fly over England, and then we'd come back around. An hour and a half later, would be like over England again, and we got to see it multiple times. And here's a really, the gods were really smiling on Piers because not only were we in the cupola flying over England, where he was born, but there were no clouds. Right, which happens like one day a year. There's like one out of 365 days when this could possibly happen. But the entire UK was crystal clear, not a cloud in the sky. And every time we passed over, he'd be like, "Oh, that." I can't do a British accent. Like, "Oh, that's where I had my first bowl of porridge."
You sound like the Queen. Are you doing the Queen or what are you doing?
You sound like a Smurf.
Oh, look, there's the pitch where I played my first rugby match. Heavens to Murgatory. And it was so, he said it with such joy and such exuberance that I was so happy for him, the first 10 orbits. But after a while, it started getting old. I'm like, I know that's where you had your first bowl of porridge. All right, I get it.
My first bowl of porridge.
I miss that guy. I really miss that guy.
Great guy.
Talladega Nights. Baby Jesus.
He hated him.
Yeah, so you guys got to switch around with your spacewalks, as you said. You got the last one. I don't know if it was the last one, but Which one was it that you two were together? It was just one out of the three then, right?
The last one.
The last
Yeah, it was
one.
the third of three. Yeah.
I remember watching that thing, from the Space Center, watching you guys in action. And I remember Garrett had this on your checklist. A lot of things you guys did I thought was ingenious. Getting all you guys together. You took your crew photo at the ballpark, or did one of your crew photos at the ballpark.
Yeah.
You did your crew photo, also the whole thing with Astronaut Jones and those fancy jackets that you had. You all got those really cool smoking jackets. I think you wore them to the Christmas party one year. Right? You got a lot of really good fun things you guys did. But I remember you guys out spacewalking and seeing on Garrett's, seeing what you guys did for the covers of your cuff checklist that we wear. Typically it has like the mission patch or something, but you guys tell us, you guys did something a little bit different on yours. How did this happen? Because when I looked, I saw it. I was like, wow, that's pretty clever.
I actually did it on my first spacewalk, on my first mission. I put a little Yankees logo on there just to represent the team while I was up there in space, and then that actually, I figured I could get free pizza because I go back to New York, and if I show that picture, that I would get complimentary slices.
Did it work?
That was the whole reason I did it. But then,
did it work?
Yes, it did.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. And then I was doing it again on 132, and then Bueno saw me doing it. He's like, well, if you're going to do that, so that's you put the Notre Dame thing on yours, right?
Yeah. So I saw that you had the New York, the NY for the Yankees, and you did it on the first spacewalk. You went out with Steve Bowen, and then I thought, well, I can do this, and so I get my pen and I put a big ND for Notre Dame on my cuff checklist, and I didn't think that much about it. It was just to kind of, like you said, part of flying in space is being able to take people with you, and that's a little way that you could take people with you. All my friends from Notre Dame, and I knew they were following me. I actually had an email log going with them, and so I would send emails from space to all my classmates, and so it was pretty cool. But so when they saw that ND, we would catch it, on the camera sometimes. We had the helmet cameras. So we would catch it, and there were some pictures that were taken that ended up with it on there. But I think the way we were kind of pushing the envelope there a little bit. We're probably close to getting in trouble, but it was also like the last mission. We thought it might be the last mission for Atlantis, and so it was definitely going to be our last mission. Flying on the space shuttle, and I think we kind of knew that we probably weren't going to fly again. So. We weren't trying to be irreverent, but it was just, we can lean forward here a little bit and just try to do something fun,
I do think they passed a rule when we got back that nobody can do that again. But so we ruined it for everybody. But
I'm sure we did.
But then the other thing that we did that we got in trouble for a little bit was, remember, we thought that for a while that we thought we were going to be the last flight of Atlantis, which is why we made this patch prominently featuring Atlantis, and even wrote Atlantis, which is unusual on a shuttle patch to write there it is. Yeah.
Look at that. I got both of you guys. See, you got this one and this one.
Yeah. So we thought we were going to be the first. We thought we were going to be the last flight of Atlantis. Turned out we're the first last flight of Atlantis. So what we did when we were in space to commemorate this, we found a part of the flight deck that's really hard to get to on Earth when there's gravity, but in zero gravity, you could float back there in this recess and reach this spot. And we put our patch up there, a sticker, just a little sticker with this symbol, and we all signed it. We said the last flight of Atlantis, and we all signed our names, and we thought that was kind of a neat little thing to remember it by. But we got in trouble because we came back home, and we figured they're never going to find that. It's way back there. Somebody found it, right? Oh. Somebody actually found it, and they're like, well, to keep it there, because we're going to launch the shuttle one more time, we got to change all the engineering drawings, and it's going to cost millions of dollars to change all the drawings and change all the all the configuration control. So we're going to have to scrape it off. And I'm like, it's a freaking sticker. It's a space shuttle. The sticker's not going to take down the space shuttle. You really think the mass properties are really going to change that much because of one freaking sticker? That's ridiculous. But they're it's $1 million. So they scraped it off. But then I don't know if you know the end of the story here, Bueno. But what happened was when they rolled Atlantis into the visitor center. So today you can see Atlantis. at the Kennedy Space Center in the visitors. It's on display.
Yep.
And when they rolled it back in there, one of these techs that knew this story climbed in there and looked in that spot, and the patch is still there.
Oh,
so
cool.
they just said that they're going to scrape it off. They never actually did. It's still
that's
there.
awesome. Yeah, we all signed it. So we had a Sharpie, and we were like, this is the equivalent of like writing on the wall, in grammar school or something.
Yeah.
You're going to get in trouble for this. But we figured, well, if it's the last time they fly and nobody's ever going to find this spot, but it turns out that they like tear the shuttle apart in between flights and put it all back together again. So yeah, somehow they found it. But I always thought it was pretty cool because I like to go visit Atlantis there at the Kennedy Space Center. And I just imagine, like if we could go up there in that, in the cockpit, we signed that thing up there. So that's
one day that we should go there together and see if we can convince the docents to let us in there and have a look at it. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Well, Bueno, you flew on 125. You flew on Atlantis twice. So when you're up there, when they look and put a 125 sticker up there too.
I will.
It doesn't count.
So there's one other funny little story that I just remembered. But so I flew on Atlantis twice, but my glasses, just like this, they flew on Atlantis 3 times.
Whoa!
Do you remember? I lost my glasses on the Hubble mission, and they floated off because up in space you don't have to put you don't have to put things down on the table. You can just let go of them; they float there.
I remember you lost your grandfather's watch or somebody's watch.
Yeah, we found that though.
We were looking around, for it, and I remember we're like, where could it be? And I remember, wait a minute, Mike, it's in here somewhere. It's in it. Nothing can get out of this thing. It's in here. Then we found it in the airline.
I think.
But what about? Remind me to go ahead.
So yeah, I lost my glasses. I let go of them. I'm doing something. I come back and it's like they're gone. I'm looking around everywhere, and I searched that place everywhere, and I couldn't find them. So I walk off the shuttle and I tell Jerry Ross, I'm like sheepishly, hey, Jerry, because you got to tell him, you got to own up.
Of course.
I said, hey, I lost my glasses in there. And I figured, well, they'll find them as they turn the shuttle around. They're going to find them.
Yeah.
They never found them. So the shuttle flies again on the next mission. I think Scorch was the commander. And when that one came down, so as they're getting it ready for Garrett and I to go fly it, they find a bunch of stuff that it was up behind like the dashboard. There's and one of the fans for the displays. And they show me this picture. There's glasses, there's pens, all this stuff, earplugs. There's one of Ray J's, sleeping pills. Remember when he sent those everywhere? So
I'm not surprised.
They send me.
They found that. Yeah.
I get an email with the picture of all this stuff, and they go, "Yeah, are those your glasses?" I go, "They sure are. Can I get those back?" And they gave them back to me.
Wow!
So my glasses flew on another mission, and then I took them with me on the 132 mission as well. So my glasses got to fly 3 times.
That's amazing.
Cool. That's a great story.
That is a great story.
Well, hey, Bueno, thank you very much for joining us, man. We got to let you go so that there'll be somebody left to actually be in the audience and watch these podcasts.
Make sure you listen.
I promise I'll listen to all your other guests. Yeah.
And like and subscribe.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Bueno. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. It was great having you. This was you brought back a lot of really good memories.
Yeah. And he's the link between us, Garrett. I think you're the only guy that not only flew with each of us, but also spacewalked with us.
Yeah, I know. I always said that Bueno was kind of like the missing link.
Needs a link.
Oh, thanks, guys. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.